There's a reason some of the most powerful men in history died alone, paranoid, and terrified in rooms guarded by people they no longer trusted. Because power doesn't behave like alcohol. It doesn't destroy you immediately. It seduces you slowly. One decision. One promotion. One victory. One moment where people stop questioning you and start obeying you. And the terrifying part is this: most people never realize they're addicted to power until they're willing to destroy everything to keep it. You're the kind of person who scrolls past uncomfortable psychological truths. This video isn't for you. But if you've ever wondered why some people become obsessed with control, we certain leaders, bosses, or manipulators slowly lose their humanity, stay with me. Hit like right now so more people discover these hidden psychological files. Subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss the next Mafia Mind breakdown. Because the truth you're about to hear explains far more than crime. It explains human nature itself. Now let's open today's file. Power rarely arrives with violence. It enters quietly. A respected position, a little authority, a little influence over people's decisions. At first, it feels harmless. The man who once struggled to be heard suddenly notices people listening carefully when he speaks. Doors open faster. Conversations become softer when he walks into the room. People begin asking for permission instead of giving opinions. And slowly something changes inside him. History has shown this transformation again and again. Mafia bosses, dictators, corporate predators, corrupt politicians, criminal masterminds. Many of them did not begin as monsters. They began as ordinary people who discovered something dangerously intoxicating: control. Picture the atmosphere: dimly lit restaurants filled with cigar smoke, rain falling outside, black luxury cars. Secret meetings behind locked office doors. Men shaking hands while silently planning betrayal. In those worlds, power became survival. The person with the most influence controlled fear, controlled money, controlled loyalty, controlled who lived comfortably and who disappeared overnight. But the deeper someone moves into power, the more reality begins to distort. Because power creates a psychological illusion. It convinces people they are above consequences, above rules, above morality, above ordinary human limits. That illusion has destroyed empires. Some of history's most feared figures reached a point where power mattered more than peace itself, more than family, more than sleep, more than life. And once that addiction begins, it never feels complete. There is always another level to conquer, another rival to eliminate, another city to dominate, another person to control. That's why powerful people often become prisoners of their own success. The mafia boss who controls millions can no longer trust his closest friend. The dictator surrounded by guards becomes terrified of assassination. The manipulator who once controlled others becomes consumed by paranoia. Because power isolates. The more feared someone becomes, the fewer honest conversations they hear. People stop telling them the truth. Everyone becomes cautious. Everyone becomes strategic. And eventually, silence replaces trust. This is why some of the most powerful individuals in history ended their lives completely alone. Not because they lacked influence, but because power poisoned every relationship around them. And the terrifying part is that society often rewards this behavior at first. Powerful people receive admiration before punishment, attention before consequences, status before exposure, which makes the addiction even stronger. Because unlike drugs or alcohol, power hides behind success. And by the time someone realizes they've become consumed by it, they are already willing to sacrifice everything to protect it. White text appears, but the real weapon wasn't violence, it was psychological control. The first psychological truth about power is this: power changes people gradually, not instantly. Psychologists have studied this for decades, according to research on authority and behavioral psychology. People often begin bending morality slowly once they feel elevated above others. Not overnight, not dramaticalismal compromises come first. A lie becomes acceptable, manipulate becomes necessary, cruelty becomes justified, and eventually the person no longer recognizes themselves. This is what made many mafia leaders so dangerous. They didn't wake up evil, they adapted to control one decision at a time until empathy became weakness, and this still happens today, not just in organized crime, in relationships, Warco. Friendships. Some people become addicted to emotional control, the same way dictators become addicted to political control. They dominate conversations, control emotions, create fear, punish disagreement, and slowly, the people around them lose confidence in themselves, because power feeds on submission. The second psychological lesson is even darker. Fear is not respect. Many powerful people confuse silence with loyalty. But psychologically, fear creates temporary obedience, not genuine trust. A terrified employee may obey a toxic boss. A frightened partner may avoid confrontation. A criminal organization may follow a violent leader. But underneath that obedience, harassment grows. People controlled through fear are often waiting for an opportunity to escape, rebel, or betray. This explains why so many powerful empires collapse from internal betrayal instead of external attack, because fear eventually destroys loyalty, and the human brain reacts dangerously when constantly exposed to fear-based control. Stress increases, anxiety grows, authenticity disappears. People begin performing survival instead of expressing honesty. That's why conversations around controlling individuals often feel exhausting. Your nervous system recognizes danger before your mind fully understands it. You feel drained, careful, tense. Not because the person shouted, but because psychological domination was happening quietly. Most dangerous manipulators rarely look dangerous. Now here's where power becomes truly destructive. Power creates isolation. The higher someone rises, the harder it becomes to know who genuinely cares about them. Think about it. If everyone benefits from your approval, how can you trust their intentions? This is why powerful individuals often become paranoid. The mafia boss suspects betrayal everywhere. The corrupt leader trusts nobody. The manipulator checks phones, conversations, and loyalty constantly. Because once someone builds their identity around control, losing control feels like death. And psychologically, paranoia becomes inevitable. The person who dominates everyone eventually becomes trapped inside their own fear. That's why some powerful people become emotionally hollow. They can command rooms but cannot experience peace. They can control others but cannot control themselves. And that may be the greatest irony of power addiction. The person who appears strongest externally is often weakest internally. So tell me in the comments, have you ever met someone addicted to control? Someone who needed dominance in every conversation, every relationship or situation. How did it affect you emotionally? Drop your experience below. The most powerful responses will be pinned because your story might help someone else recognize manipulation before it destroys their confidence. And trust me, next psychological truth is the one most people never see coming. Here's the hidden truth about power that destroys most people. Power does not create character. It exposes character. If someone lacks discipline, power amplifies their ego. If someone lacks emotional control, power amplifies cruelty. If someone already carries insecurity, power transforms it into domination. That's why corruption spread so easily among people obsessed with status, because power removes resistance, and once resistance disappears, true personality emerges. History proves this repeatedly. Some leaders used power to protect people. Others used it to feed narcissism and fear. The difference was never power itself. The difference was self-control. And this connects directly to modern life. Today, psychological domination doesn't always look like organized crime or dictatorships. Sometimes it looks like a boss humiliating employees to feel superior, a partner controlling emotions through guilt, an influencer obsessed with validation and status, a manipulator who constantly needs attention, obedience, and admiration. The environment changes, human psychology doesn't. Because the addiction is never truly about money or authority. It's about emotional emptiness. Power temporarily fills insecurity. For a moment, controlling others makes people feel important, untouchable, valuable, but the feeling never lasts. So the hunger grows stronger. More attention, more dominance, more control. This is why addiction to power never ends naturally. There is always another target. And eventually obsession consumes the person entirely. Many powerful figures destroy themselves trying to protect an image they can no longer live without. They sacrifice relationships, peace, sleep, humanity, all to preserve control. But here's the final twist most people never realize. The most powerful individuals are often the most emotionally fragile. Because when identity depends entirely on dominance, any challenge feels catastrophic. Criticism feels like betrayal. Disagreement feels like disrespect. Loss of status feels unbearable. And that emotional fragility explains why powerful people sometimes react with extreme anger over small threats. The empire looks strong, but internally it's collapsing. Which leads to the deepest psychological truth. In this entire file, a person who cannot control themselves will eventually become addicted to controlling others. So, how do you protect yourself from people addicted to power? First, stop confusing intimidation with strength. True confidence doesn't need constant dominance. It doesn't need humiliation. It doesn't need fear. Second, pay attention to patterns of control. People addicted to power often need the final word, punish disagreement, create emotional dependency, use fear, guilt, or silence strategically. And the earlier you recognize these behaviors, the safer you become psychologically. Another important lesson is this: never build your self-worth around controlling other people, because that addiction never ends peacefully. Real strength is emotional discipline, the ability to stay calm under pressure, the ability to control ego, the ability to walk away from unnecessary dominance. That is far more powerful than intimidation. And finally, understand the weakness behind every manipulator. They fear losing control. That fear is what drives the entire performance, which means knowledge becomes protection. Because once you understand psychological manipulation, you stop reacting emotionally to it. And that awareness alone changes everything. Knowledge like this doesn't just entertain. It arms you. In the end, power itself was never the real danger. The real danger began the moment someone believed their value depended entirely on controlling others. That's how influence becomes obsession, respect becomes fear, leadership becomes tyranny. And eventually, the person who once controlled everyone becomes controlled by their own addiction. Because the most dangerous prison in the world is not made of steel. It's the human ego. Thank you for watching this file all the way to the end. If this video opened your eyes even a little, share it with one person who needs to hear these truths before manipulation enters their life. And notice, subscribe and turn on notifications so you're ready when the next sealed Mafia Mind file drops. And tell me in the comments, which psychological topic or underworld mentality should we expose next? Until then, stay sharp out there, because the manipulators never sleep.